Welcome to the Does This Happen to You podcast, where we explore the funny side of truth is stranger than fiction stories. Our story this week is from Kendra Sparkles, who you'll find on Medium.com. And here is, Moving with a Feral Cat Didn't Go as Planned. If my new house collapses, blame Feral Fawcett. Hand me the hockey stick, I commanded, lying flat on the top shelf of the basement storage unit as it wobbled. Vincent steadied the shelves and handed me the stick, accidentally smacking my face. Luckily, I was wearing a safety helmet complete with a face shield, so I felt nothing. I wondered if this was what my husband had in mind when he vowed to love me for better or worse, as I adjusted my leather, bite-resistant gloves and gave him a thumbs up. "Let's do this," I said, my voice muffled by the plastic safety shield. Cautiously, I slid the stick between the concrete foundation and wooden floor joists in the basement of the home we had moved into only a week prior. The stick grazed the gray blob of fur balled up in the tight space, but Feral Fawcett didn't budge. The terrified cat turned her head slowly, let out a weak hiss, and slumped back down. We'd tried everything to coax her out, but it wasn't until I brought our dog downstairs, aka the love of her life, and she didn't even attempt to crawl out of her hiding spot, that I knew Feral Fawcett was stuck. "She's not looking good," I called down to Vincent, still holding onto the unsteady shelf for dear life. Feral Fawcett's eyes were sunken in. She seemed lethargic. The food and water I'd crammed up on the ledge appeared untouched. I had no clue if she could even reach the dishes, but I couldn't push them any closer. After all, Feral Fawcett had been through being captured and moved across the state to 2 different homes. I feared the traveling feral cat might die wedged into a dark corner of my basement. For those of you who haven't followed Feral Fawcett's story, here's a Cliff Notes version of events. Roughly 5 years ago, a feral cat showed up at my house and fell in love with my dog, Bronco. Beautiful and oozing with catitude, she reminded me of a celebrity. I named her Feral Fawcett. Even though the sassy feline wanted nothing to do with humans, she began waiting at the back door every morning to take long walks on our property with Bronco. The two became inseparable. Last year, my husband was transferred through his work back to his hometown, several hours from where we lived, and I knew we couldn't leave Feral Fawcett behind. I successfully trapped the unsuspecting cat and brought her to my father-in-law's, where we stayed for nearly a year while we house hunted. Feral Fawcett remained inside during that time, as I was scared I wouldn't be able to catch her again if I let her back out. While inside at my father-in-law's, Feral Fawcett was happy to be with our dog, but still wouldn't let anyone touch her. To make matters worse, she started getting territorial over Bronco. On his birthday, we sang to him while he barked along with us. He loves his birthday. Feral Fawcett thought we were hurting her boyfriend. She rushed into the room, hissing and growling. My children and I stood on the couch, frozen and shocked, until she eventually realized Bronco wasn't in danger. Talk about a possessive girlfriend. It was clear Feral Fawcett needed to go back outside. When we moved into our new house, I planned to keep Feral Fawcett inside for a few weeks to get used to her new surroundings. I'd hoped this would keep her from running off and disappearing into unfamiliar territory as soon as I let her outside. Unfortunately, the terrified kitty hid like she was being stalked by the paparazzi and managed to get stuck between the foundation and floor joists in the basement. The look of defeat in her eyes haunted me as Vincent and I tried to figure out how to free her. Whatever we did, we had to move fast. Farrell Fawcett wasn't doing well. "You have to cut a notch in one of the floor joists to give her room to get her head out," I instructed Vincent, examining the tight space and wondering how she'd gotten through it in the first place. Vincent refused, stating that cutting into the support beams could weaken the entire structure of the house. I irrationally screamed over him that Farrell Fawcett was dying and I didn't care about the stupid house. He's truly blessed to have me as his wife. Later, when I went upstairs to put my kids to bed, I heard a loud banging coming from the basement. When I went to investigate, Vincent was taking a hammer to the cement foundation, creating a space just big enough for Farrell Fawcett to squeeze through. I hugged him and ignored the string of profanities he shouted as he chipped away at our new home. Vincent had never looked sexier. Sadly, it seemed the destruction was for nothing. We tried nudging her toward the widened area, smearing cat food on it, and putting Bronco back in the basement. Farrell Fawcett didn't budge. As we approached week 2 of Farrell Fawcett rotting away in the basement, I felt like I was rotting away too. I couldn't eat or sleep. I couldn't focus on anything but the poor trapped cat. I knew time was running out as she still wasn't eating. I contacted a local cat rescue organization, but received no response. I drove over an hour to purchase an animal catcher pole, thinking maybe I could use it to force her to the opening and pull her down. When I returned, she was nowhere to be found. I worried she'd retreated further into the hole and gotten stuck in the wall. At 2 a.m., after a week of unsuccessfully trying to get Farrell Fawcett unstuck, I cried alone in my new kitchen while Vincent was at work. Moving with 2 young kids, 2 dogs, and 2 cats was stressful enough, but the guilt I felt over the feral cat situation was overwhelming. I'd moved her over 100 miles from her home to keep her alive, yet it would be my fault if Farrell Fawcett died. I felt like a failure. As I rested my head on my kitchen table and sobbed, I heard a faint meow and bolted upright. There, in the living room, was Farrell Fawcett, snuggling next to Bronco. She had managed to free herself. No catcher poles or hockey sticks needed. In the days that followed, Farrell Fawcett stayed out of the basement. She became increasingly antsy and attempted to bolt out the door whenever Bronco went outside. I knew it was time to release her, but I worried she might get lost on our heavily wooded property. Still, she was wild, and I couldn't force her to stay inside forever, even if I wanted to. I opened the door and said goodbye as Farrell Fawcett got her first taste of freedom in a year. I prayed it wasn't the last time I'd see her as she ran toward the tree line. 5 minutes later, she followed Bronco inside and cuddled with him on his dog bed. Talk about anticlimactic. The next morning, Farrell Fawcett decided she was ready to return to the great outdoors for good. She's been living outside for over a week, yet occasionally pops inside to lure her boyfriend out and to escape the rain. Our sassy feral celebrity is back to her routine of waiting at the door for Bronco and spending her days lounging outside with him. She sunbathes on the porch and crawls into her feral villa for afternoon cat naps. She's never been happier. Now that Farrell Fawcett is safe and settled in, I finally feel like we've found our forever home. Let's hope it doesn't collapse on us from the hammer Vincent took to the foundation. Thanks for listening. I'm Chris Kepler, and I hope you enjoyed listening to these stories as much as I enjoyed narrating them. I'd love for more people to hear these wonderful stories, so please share and tell your friends.